The paper was still warm from the printer, lying on my kitchen counter next to a half-empty coffee mug. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. I picked it up, my eyes tracing the stark lines of the FBI composite sketch, the severe haircut, the defiant eyes. Then my focus dropped to the name below the image, Verity. And in that silent, ordinary kitchen, I recognized my sister. The woman the federal government considered one of its most wanted domestic terrorists was the same woman who had, 2 years earlier, texted me a photo of her cat in a cardboard box. The woman the FBI was hunting had evaded capture for 19 months. Not because she was a master of disguise, or because the evidence was scarce. It was because of a single, fundamental assumption every single person made about her, an assumption I had helped build. By the end of this, you'll understand how someone can vanish not into a crowd, but into the blind spot of everyone who thinks they know her. This is Behind the Crime Files. My sister, Sophia Marie Keller, lived in a beige 2-bedroom apartment in a complex called The Oaks, in the Norwood neighborhood of Cincinnati. It was the kind of place with thin carpets, a pool that turned green by mid-July, and neighbors who nodded but didn't speak. Her life, by all accounts, was ordinary, predictable, safe. She was a 34-year-old data integrity analyst for Midland Continental Logistics, a freight company with a warehouse off the I-275 loop. Her job, as she described it to me, was finding the ghosts in the machine, tiny discrepancies in shipping manifests, inventory logs, fuel efficiency reports. She was good at it. She had been Employee of the Month twice in 5 years. Her boss, in a statement later, called her unassuming, meticulous, and exceptionally bright. She preferred to work alone. At home, she lived with an 11-pound tuxedo cat named Mr. Binks. Her bookshelves held a mix of paperback thrillers, textbooks on database architecture, and a complete set of Calvin and Hobbes. She watched nature documentaries. She cooked the same rotation of 7 meals. She wore jeans and sweaters from Target. She had friends, but not a huge circle. Mainly people from her college days at the University of Dayton, who were now scattered across the Midwest, connected by occasional texts and a yearly Christmas card. She dated, but nothing serious lately. Her last boyfriend, Mark, had moved to Cleveland for a job 18 months prior. They'd amicably agreed not to do long distance. It just wasn't worth the hassle, she told me. Her most notable trait to our family was a quiet, stubborn independence. When our parents offered to help her buy a house, she refused, saying she liked the flexibility of renting. When I pushed her to come on a group vacation, she said she preferred her own company. It wasn't hostile. It was just Sophia. She was a still pond. No one, not me, not our parents, not her coworkers, expected anything about her to ever make national news. On the evening of March 14, 2021, at around 7:30 p.m., I got a text from Sophia. It was a photo of her cat, Mr. Binks, sitting in an empty cardboard box that had once held a case of printer paper. His paws were on the rim, his green eyes wide. The caption read, "He claims this is his new spaceship. Mission Control is demanding treats." I sent back a laughing emoji. That was the last direct contact anyone in our family had with her. I didn't think anything of the silence for a few days. We sometimes went a week without texting. But on March 17th, her friend Lisa called me. Sophia hadn't shown up for their weekly Wednesday trivia night at O'Malley's pub. She hadn't called. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Lisa had driven by her apartment. Her car, a gray 2017 Honda Civic, was gone. This was unusual. Sophia was reliable. If she said she'd be there, she was there. A no-show without a text was not in her pattern. I drove to her apartment that night. The Honda was not in its assigned spot. I knocked. No answer. Peering through the blinds, I could see the living room was tidy. I called the landlord, an elderly man named Mr. Ferris. After some hesitation, he let me in. The air was still. Nothing was overturned. No signs of a struggle. The bed was made. Dishes were clean in the drying rack. Mr. Binks wound around my legs, meowing plaintively. His food bowl in the kitchen was empty. The dry kibble scattered on the linoleum where he tried to scrape the last pieces out. Her work laptop, a silver Dell, was not on the desk in the small second bedroom she used as an office. Her personal laptop, an older MacBook, was also gone. I checked her desk drawer. Her U.S. passport, its blue cover slightly faded, was there. I filed a missing persons report with the Cincinnati Police Department that afternoon. The police investigation began with the assumption of a voluntary disappearance. The initial report, which I later obtained through a public records request, noted, "Subject is a 34-year-old female with no history of mental illness or substance abuse. No evidence of forced entry or disturbance at residence. Vehicle missing. Electronics missing. Pet left unattended. Suggestive of planned departure." They found her car 14 days later, on March 31st, in the long-term parking lot at the Cincinnati/Northern Kentucky International Airport. It was parked in Section D, Row 12. The ticket stub showed it had entered the lot at 10:08 a.m. on March 15th, the morning after her last text to me. The car was clean. No fingerprints except hers on the steering wheel and gear shift. No personal items in the glove box or trunk except the standard registration and a half-empty bottle of windshield washer fluid. Security footage from the terminal entrances for that day was pulled. After hours of review, an officer identified a woman matching Sophia's general description. The timestamp was 10:22 a.m. The woman wore a beige trench coat Sophia owned and had Sophia's shoulder-length brown hair. She carried a single navy blue Nike duffel bag. She kept her head down, walked with purpose, and moved through the crowds toward the security checkpoint for Concourse B. The footage was grainy, shot from a high angle. She never looked up at the cameras. The police theory solidified. She'd purchased a ticket, likely with cash, and flown somewhere. They began the laborious process of checking passenger manifests for all flights out of CVG that day, a list numbering in the thousands. But there was one detail that didn't sit right with me: the duffel bag. It was a specific bag. I'd given it to her for Christmas in 2018, when she'd mentioned maybe joining a yoga class. She'd never gone. Once, when I was helping her look for a lost earring in her closet, I'd seen the bag, tag still on, stuffed behind a vacuum cleaner. "Oh, that," she'd said. "I hate how the strap feels. Cuts into my shoulder. It's pointless." Why would she use a bag she disliked, a bag she had never used, for what might be the most important trip of her life? Wouldn't she use a suitcase with wheels? A backpack? Something practical? The writing style was predominantly academic, aggressive, filled with references to philosophers like Baudrillard and Zerzan. But then, another flash. A critique of corporate environmental policy described it as a performance of concern, as meaningful as a thoughts and prayers text after a disaster. Sophia had used that exact phrase, thoughts and prayers text, derisively when our aunt had sent a generic condolence message after our grandfather's funeral. It was her specific, sardonic turn of phrase. And another, the manifesto described data brokers as ghosts in the machine, harvesting identities. Ghosts in the machine. That was how Sophia had described her job. Her exact words. This was no coincidence. This was a pattern, a signature. A terrible, impossible understanding began to form in the back of my mind, a shape I refused to look at directly. With mechanical slowness, I navigated to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's website. My mouth was dry. I went to the most wanted terrorists list. I had never looked at it before. My world had been my sister's quiet disappearance, not this theater of political violence. The page loaded. Mugshots, artist composites, aliases, lists of charges that spoke of bombings and hacking and shadow wars. I scrolled past images of men with hard eyes, foreign names. And then I stopped. There she was, not listed as Sophia Keller. The name read Verity, but the face. It was a composite sketch, not a photograph. The hair was different, choppy, dyed raven black, with a severe fringe across the forehead. The complexion was drawn paler, but the eyes, the calm, wide-set hazel eyes, the specific arch of her left eyebrow, slightly higher than the right, the set of her jaw, the slight, almost imperceptible downturn of the left corner of her lips, not quite a frown, but an expression of focused neutrality. It was my sister's face, stripped of warmth, hardened into an icon of defiance. The caption below chilled me. Verity, believed to be a primary author of PLV propaganda and communications, and a strategic planner for the group's operations. Linked to the Alara Institute incendiary attack, 2021, and multiple cyber intrusions targeting biotechnology and surveillance firms. Charges: domestic terrorism, use of an explosive device to commit a felony, destruction of government property, cyber terrorism, considered armed and extremely dangerous. Report any sighting to law enforcement. I made a sound, a choked gasp. Mr. Binks, sleeping on a chair beside me, lifted his head. I printed the page, the printer word. I held the warm paper, staring at the eyes that were my sister's and yet belonged to a stranger called Verity. Forensic linguists with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit would later confirm the link, running the manifesto texts against samples of Sophia's writing, her work emails, an old college thesis, even her text messages to me. The statistical likelihood of another author was infinitesimal. The syntactic patterns, the unique punctuation habits, she always used double hyphens for em-dashes. The rare vocabulary choices were a perfect match, but in that moment my gut knew. The psychology here was profound. The persona of Sophia Keller, the quiet, reliable, slightly boring data analyst, wasn't just a cover. It was a calculated, long-term construct. The ordinariness was the camouflage. This aligns with a known phenomenon in high-level deception and intelligence tradecraft. The gray man theory. Don't hide in the shadows. Hide in the light. Be so average, so predictable, so unremarkable that you become invisible. You don't stand out because you are a perfect copy of the background. Her entire life, from at least her late teens onward, appears to have been a study in controlled performance. The occasional quirky text to me, like the cat photo, served a dual purpose. It maintained an emotional bond, making her seem present and real, while also reinforcing her harmless, slightly nerdy character. The trivia nights, the bland apartment, the Target sweaters, the predictable job. All were layers of a persona designed to be easily dismissed and quickly explained. The FBI was looking for Verity, a radical terrorist intellectual, a firebrand. They were searching dark web forums, radical gatherings, looking for someone who looked the part. They weren't looking for a woman who argued about Star Trek plotlines with her brother, worried about her cat's weight, and made a mean chicken cacciatore. The two identities, Sophia and Verity, were so cognitively separate in the minds of anyone who might go looking that no one could bridge the gap. The investigator's bias is to look for a criminal. Nobody looks for a sister, not in that way, until a random, haunting phrase in a YouTube documentary built that bridge. What happened next was a descent into a surreal duality, where I became both the brother of a missing woman and the unwitting informant on a most wanted terrorist. I called the FBI's national tip line. My voice was strangely flat. I believe the individual you are looking for under the alias Verity is my sister, Sophia Marie Keller, who has been missing since March of 2021. The reaction on the other end was not shock or immediate excitement. It was a careful, procedural calm. "Please hold for a moment, sir." After a brief pause, a different voice came on, identifying himself as Special Agent Cole with the FBI's Cincinnati field office. He asked for my address. He asked if I was alone. He said 2 agents would be at my house within 40 minutes. "Do not discuss this with anyone else until we speak," he instructed. The 2 agents, a man and a woman in sober suits, arrived precisely 38 minutes later. They were polite but intensely focused. They took the printed page. They asked to see the text message on my phone. They took photographs of it with a separate camera. For 3 hours, they sat in my living room asking questions. They wanted family photos, childhood albums, yearbooks, her college thesis, any handwritten notes. They wanted me to walk them through her personality, her habits, her political views. "Did she ever express radical beliefs?" Agent Cole asked. "No," I said. "She voted. She thought politics was mostly corrupt. She got annoyed about plastic recycling. That was it." "Did she have exceptional computer skills?" "She was good at her job. She built her own PC once." I didn't think it was exceptional. Was she secretive? I almost laughed. She was private. Isn't that different? The female agent, Agent Vance, gave me a look I couldn't read. Often, the difference is one of degree, she said quietly. Over the next weeks, as the FBI merged the missing persons case with the domestic terrorism investigation, the truth emerged in agonizing, fragmentary pieces. Sophia had not been recruited. She had been, according to digital footprints the FBI painstakingly reconstructed, a founding member. Her job as a data integrity analyst was not a cover in the sense of being a sham. It was her source of intelligence and her training ground. It gave her a master's understanding of how information systems worked, where their vulnerabilities lay, and how to move data unseen. It also gave her access to shipping logistics, which, the agents hinted, may have facilitated the movement of materials for the PLV. The Verity persona had existed in encrypted chat rooms and on secure message boards since at least 2015. The FBI showed me snippets with sensitive details redacted. The writing was powerful, incisive, and angry. It spoke of the violence of the mundane and the prison of digital convenience. It argued that true liberation required the dismantling of technological systems of control. This wasn't the sophomoric ranting of a disaffected youth. It was a coherent, developed ideology. The trip to the airport was a meticulously staged exit strategy, a piece of performance art designed to control the narrative of her disappearance. She left the car in long-term parking to firmly plant the idea of air travel. The duffel bag was a prop, chosen precisely because it was out of character, a subtle clue that would be noted but dismissed, reinforcing the idea of a hasty, irrational departure. She likely never boarded a plane. The FBI theory is that she walked through the terminal, used a restroom to change her outer clothing or simply alter her appearance, then exited through a ground transportation door, where she was picked up by an associate in a vehicle that had entered and exited the airport's short-term parking, lost in the thousands of daily transactions. Her digital footprint didn't vanish because she was panicked and running. It vanished because she knew exactly how to make it vanish. She had likely spent years preparing go bags of alternate identities, cash, and clean digital devices. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't impulsive. It was a plan that required patience, intellectual rigor, and a profound ability to dissociate from one's own life. It was a plan 2 decades in the making, born in a mind that had learned, as a survival strategy, to hide its most true and dangerous self in the most visible place of all, an ordinary life. The public revelation, when it came, was a media earthquake. Most wanted terrorist was quiet data analyst, brother says. Our family was thrown into a maelstrom of reporters, satellite trucks, and online speculation. My parents, in Florida, had to be escorted by police from their home to an undisclosed location after death threats arrived in the mail. My father had a mild heart attack. My mother stopped speaking for nearly a week. The case left behind more questions than answers for us, the family. Who were we mourning? The sister and daughter we grew up with, or a fiction she had performed for us with Oscar-worthy consistency? The grief fractured into something unspeakable and complex. It was a double loss. First her physical absence, then the annihilation of the person we thought we knew. The FBI's investigation into the PLV intensified, but Verity remained, and remains, elusive. The manifesto releases under that name stopped after the identification. Some analysts believe she's still writing and planning under a new alias. Her style evolved. Others theorize she has moved overseas or has gone so deep underground that even her comrades may not know her location. The PLV itself went quiet for almost a year, then claimed a minor cyber attack on a police union database in Ohio. The communique had a different stylistic flair. She was either gone or she had learned from the near miss. For me, the betrayal was total, a gutting of my personal history. Every memory is now suspect. Was her laughter at my jokes real? Was her care for our aging parents an act? Was I, her brother, just a vital part of her set dressing, the loving sibling who provided the ultimate layer of credible alibi? The relationship I cherished now feels like a prop in a play I didn't know was running. Yet, Intertwined with the betrayal is a horrible, grudging awe at the sheer scale and audacity of the deception. She used our love, our perception of her normalcy, as the perfect shield. I look at Mr. Binks, now sleeping on my couch, and I am torn. Did she truly love this creature she left behind? Or was he, too, a tool for building the persona of a caring, solitary cat lady? I go through the boxes in my basement now with the eyes of an archaeologist examining a forgery. The boring textbooks on SQL and statistical analysis. The journals I'd once glanced at, filled not with personal thoughts but with complex, hand-drawn data flowcharts and network diagrams I'd dismissed as work notes. Were these plans for hacking intrusions? The FBI took them all. The truth was there. The ideology was there, hidden in plain sight, encoded in the dry language of her profession. I just didn't possess the cipher to read it. The final, unanswerable question is, why? Was it ideology? Was it a profound, hidden anger at the world? Or was it, in the end, the ultimate expression of the loneliness I sometimes saw in her eyes? A loneliness so vast that only the complete annihilation of her given self and its replacement with a self-made legend could ever hope to fill it? Based on this story, do you believe Sophia's transformation into Verity was driven primarily by a genuine, deeply held ideological conviction, or was the radical ideology itself secondary? A vehicle for a deeper, more personal psychological need for autonomy, control, and ultimate significance beyond the confines of an ordinary life. If you're interested in the psychology and stories behind real crimes, subscribe to Behind the Crime Files for more deep dives into the cases that defy easy explanation and challenge what we think we know about the people closest to us.